Christian colleges and universities demonstrate tremendous respect for non-Christian ideas. It's the Christian ideas they have a hard time with. Next on Campus Roundup. Hello, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment today focuses on pro-life college Republicans being attacked at Christian schools. To talk more about this, we welcome Graham Pirro, a staff reporter at the College Fix. Graham, we have a remarkable situation in South Dakota. Augustana College, a small liberal college university in South Dakota, group of conservative kids, conservative Christian kids, chalking pro-life notes and messages across campus, find themselves being persecuted for it.
So in mid-November, a group of pro-life students that were members of the college Republicans and another pro-life group chalked pro-life messages on campus. These messages were things like pro-life equals pro-woman, abortion stops a beating heart, and also Bible verses like Psalm 139. And what happened was a group of pro-choice students responded by washing away the chalk with water. And in the wake of this, several members of the college Republicans spoke to me on the record about character attacks and harassment that they were receiving since the incident.
The university is adamant in their letter, their response, that we believe that all different groups, including pro-life students, have the right to chalk the campus if they want to. And yet this has become something more now. Not only have these students attacked the pro-life message, but as you said, they're beginning to harass some of the students. What form is this harassment taking?
Sure. So I have a couple of specific examples listed in the article. A lot of the students reported receiving the attacks over social media or just hearing conversations on campus. One student talked about how the college Republicans group was being accused of being racist. The president of the club said that many pro-choice students were intensely ridiculing some female pro-life students for being a disgrace to women, to the point of making some of them cry. They were accused of being bigoted, homophobic. One pro-life female student was accused of being a traitor to her gender, and other such character attacks. And they seem to be really upset about it because the situation and the discourse on campus just seems to be totally negative and hostile towards any sort of pro-life student, even though, as you were saying, it is a Christian university.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to follow up with you on. We've seen this across the country, universities, Christian universities, Catholic universities. We see traditional Christian values in the case of some of our Catholic schools, actually faculty and students radically defying the teachings of the Catholic Church. This is a Lutheran school in South Dakota. Where is the administration on this? Why are Catholic and Christian schools so unwilling to defend Christian values when they're threatened on college campuses?
Oh, sure. So, I'm really not sure. And I was surprised that Augustana didn't respond to any requests for comment from me for the article. I will say that one student didn't come out and say that they were receiving some support from the campus community, actually. Surprisingly enough, many students who were pro-life were reaching out with messages of support or in support of the group's free speech. And one student even said that some students on campus were trying to learn more and trying to get more involved in the organization. So there was some good to come out of it. But I'm really not sure if it's, school administrations trying to appease these students who are pro-choice. But it just seems right now that administrations might be caught in the middle. They're not entirely sure how to handle this situation.
A lot of schools do have Christian boards of directors. A lot of the Christian schools have a very serious Christian leadership outside of campus there, the board of directors, the trustees, yet they never seem to get involved with this either. The idea that what we're seeing is that the traditional Christianity, biblical Christianity, seems increasingly at odds with progressive values. And what alarms me a little bit is the degree to which the schools are unwilling to defend their own founding charters against some of these radical kids. And why is it okay on a college campus, particularly a Christian campus? We know that if it had been Christian kids who erased and defaced and then tried to bully progressive kids on a Christian campus, Christian schools would have no trouble condemning that. But when it goes the other way, nothing but silence.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on that one. I think you hit the nail on the head. It does seem to me like the administration, again, they're trying to balance the fact that these pro-life students are probably in the minority right now on campus, and they're trying to make sure that they avoid any sort of, conflict or protests from students who are in the majority on whatever issue the issue is on campus. So I just think that administrations are struggling to understand exactly how to deal with balancing, on one hand, the fact that they have this charter to commit to, but on the other hand, the reality that the majority of students probably don't agree with that charter or whatever that charter says.
I've always thought, as somebody who's had 20 years of Christian education myself, I've always thought that dogma oftentimes gets in the way of critical thinking. When you have a series of dogmatic beliefs that cannot be challenged or threatened, people sort of lapse into bad habits. The irony to me is the most dogmatic people on these Christian campuses are the leftist protesters. They're the ones who are almost inquisitorial in their unwillingness to tolerate or even engage in dialogue, like you just pointed out. And that's the big tragedy for me.
Yeah, and I hope that a lot of these pro-life students walk away with the ability to, defend their positions more rigorously because they encounter all this disagreement when they're able to engage in debate. But, again, I worry that a lot of these debates just get reduced down to, name calling behind people's backs and other, attacks on social media. A lot of what the college Republicans I talked to reported experiencing. So I'm not sure what that bodes for the future.
Well, as long as the punishments for defacing, chalking, or silencing speech are always one way only, we're going to get a worse and worse campus climate. Unless these kids who took it upon themselves to try to silence the Christian kids, unless they meet the same kind of discipline or the same kind of punishment that Christians would have faced if they did the same thing, it's just going to get worse and worse. Graham, it's always a great pleasure to speak with you. Keep up the great reporting, and we'll see you again soon. All right, now shifting to Talking Campus, our weekly discussion with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix associate editor Greg Piper to continue this conversation about pro-life students on Christian campuses facing tremendous oppression. Greg, welcome to the program today.
Good to be here.
Well, we just talked to Graham Piero, got some interesting insights about what happened in South Dakota. We've seen it across the country, a little college, Christian college, Augustana College, where pro-life kids are being harassed, their messages are being erased on campus. The university doesn't seem terribly interested in intervening in this in any way. What is your sense of this across the country? Catholic and Christian colleges that not only are unwilling to defend their Christian mission, but they seem oddly uninterested when Christian kids on their campuses are being persecuted.
I would say it's probably a bigger issue on Catholic campuses, at least the ones that we follow. They've gone a little further down the social justice rabbit hole than, let's say, evangelical campuses or other Protestant campuses there. I would just say they're kind of going along the same path as their secular counterparts. They see disagreement as potentially hateful, as potentially triggering. One of the odd expressions that I heard at my own campus, Seattle Pacific University, which is just a non-denominational or rather free Methodist evangelical school, is that it's un-Christ-like, which I always thought was an odd expression because Jesus Christ liked to argue. And so I was always rather surprised when you'd hear campus administrators say that's not Christ-like, when student leaders or student activists would say Jesus wouldn't have these kind of full-throated arguments with people. I'm wondering what scripture are they reading?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, somebody once famously remarked that Christianity is not a suicide pact. It's not a religion where you just sit there, shut up, and take it. And you think about the great 2,000-year history of Western culture, which, of course, is also under fire on campuses, Christian and non-Christian across the country. But you have this great intellectual tradition for 2,000 years where Christian theologians, Christian doubters, atheists have been going back and forth and really hashing through the consequences of faith and no faith, belief and no belief. Yet on college campuses, like you just said, particularly Christian and Catholic colleges, it seems like even debating social justice issues from a Christian perspective is verboten.
It's a strange turn of events. One of the biggest ones that has come up in our coverage repeatedly is actually DePaul University in Chicago. They've gone through this plenty of times with students. They have a fairly active college Republicans chapter. They like to invite sometimes controversial speakers, but they also just want to support political candidates. And in 2016, this happened in a phenomenon we saw across the country dubbed the chalkening, where students would simply chalk pro-Trump slogans on their campus, "Make America Great Again" or Trump 2016 before he wrapped up the nomination. And they would be investigated. Their chalk would be washed away. DePaul, in one really unusual situation, said it would violate our nonprofit tax status if you keep chalking these slogans on our campus, which really makes no sense. It's attributed to students and has nothing to do with the university, as long as it's obvious that it's not the university doing it. And so we've seen some creative attempts by administrators to try to get students to kind of back away from even routine political activism, not even something more kind of inflammatory like an affirmative action bake sale. It seems like simply expressing conservative views, simply favoring Republicans in any sense, will increasingly get you investigated, or at least your activism will kind of be censored, marginalized, washed away.
Yeah, and we know in places like DePaul, they didn't have similar concerns when progressive students chalked pro-Hillary Clinton standards, right? Messages on campus. That didn't seem to bother the administration or threaten their 501c3 status.
Exactly. I would say simply that these campuses just have larger, more vocal left-wing student activist populations. They're more wary of doing things that are going to rile them up, that are going to draw unwanted attention. They don't want their president's office to be taken over by activists. It's really just easier to tell the college Republicans, tell the conservative students that you're kind of a minority here. Just keep your head down. Just keep going. Don't draw too much attention here because we're going to have to crack down on you. It's what the student population wants.
So what we're seeing on Christian campuses is a culture where the administration is A, worried about their funding, and B, not wanting to fight the good fight against people who don't share the values. That strikes me, you mentioned Jesus Christ, the great arguer, before. That strikes me as remarkably un-Christian. I don't mean that in the theological sense. I mean it in the sense that seems really contrary to the way Jesus Christ himself conducted.
Yeah, I mean, when you see how Jesus actually talked to people, he would tell parables, he would argue with them, he would try to kind of suss out, help them think of a different way to approach something that they had been steeped in growing up. What you often see is this kind of selective citing of Jesus' concern for the poor, for the marginalized, to reach out to these populations and to functionally say that if you include harsh words in that, if you have strong disagreements with these people, you're actually marginalizing them also. It's considered hate speech. It hurts them. A lot of this just comes from the secular schools that we follow that have been doing this for probably maybe 10 to 20 years longer than the Christian schools. One of the more recent ones we covered is at Western Washington University, where the college Republicans there or rather Students for Life, were just chalking pro-life messages on campus. Student activists came up and started just erasing them, washing them away with water, saying it was anti-choice and it was hurtful. And the school had said, no, you can do this, but just make sure it's not hate speech. And that's not really a useful thing to tell these students. What do you consider hate speech there? Is it simply saying that adoption is better than abortion? Is it anything that might make someone who's had an abortion feel bad about it?
Well, what you see, and I think you hit the nail exactly on the head, is all the love and tolerance of Christianity for non-Christian ideals, but none of the responsibility and none of the accountability.
That doesn't really fit with the kind of muscular Christianity that history has seen, where there's been a lot of argument and debate, councils coming together to decide what Scripture actually means. They seem to want to kind of whitewash that.
Well, everybody getting together on these bucolic Christian campuses, unless you happen to support traditional Christian values. Greg Piper, it has been a great pleasure to speak with you today, and look forward to talking to you next time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Christian history is the fact that Christianity conquered the Roman Empire with argument, not with bullets or guns or swords or spears. That Christianity became the religion of Rome, the Roman Empire, not because it fought harder on the battlefield, but because its dialectic, its arguments won people over. Fast forward 2,000 years later, all the universities in Western culture 1,000 years ago were created by Christians. Here we have a situation now today where it seems like even on Christian and Catholic campuses, the one thing you cannot be, the only thing that cannot be tolerated, is a devout doctrinaire Christian. To advocate Christian ideals, whether it's life or abortion or sexuality, to advocate those ideals in a Christian context and a Christian campus, more often than not seems to get these kids in trouble. Catholic and Christian universities are shockingly tolerant, remarkably tolerant, when it comes to allowing non-Christian arguments to thrive and flourish on their campuses. Where they seem to fall short is their willingness to defend Christian ideas, and that makes them no longer Christian colleges. And that's the Final Fix. Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix by joining us on all of our social media platforms. For the Campus Roundup, I'm Dr. Duke, and we will see you next time.